There's no sentence that Charlie Kirk would have objected to more than that. Hate speech, of course, is any speech that the people in power hate, but they don't define it that way. Any attempt to do that is a denial of the humanity of American citizens and cannot be allowed under any circumstances. That's got to be the red line.
Tucker Carlson just revealed what Charlie Kirk stood for most of all in his homage to the recently deceased and murdered conservative influencer. In this clip, he gets into what he was most passionate about, what it tells us about Charlie, and what it tells us about our society, culture, and political system in general. So let's get his take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It's been noted in the past couple of days, Charlie was a free speech champion. Absolutely he was. And I pray that that's his legacy. But I also think it's important to explain why that mattered to him. It was not abstract in any sense. It was central. It was the core. Because consider what it means if you don't respect free speech, which is another way of saying free conscience, the right of other people to make up their own minds about the basic questions of what is right or wrong and to express their views on those issues. If you don't acknowledge the right of other people to do that, and if you take steps to prevent them from doing that, what are you really saying? You're really saying, I don't think you have a soul. I think you're a meat puppet I can control. I think you're an animal, maybe sub-animal. You're a slave. You're a person to whom I can dictate belief. I don't acknowledge that you have the right to come to your own conclusion is another way of saying I don't acknowledge that you're a human being. It's dark. There's nothing darker than that. And trust me, they believe it, the ones who've thought about it. And there are a lot of those. But for a lot of people, particularly those who are just repeating what they think they should say or responding to the momentary rage of the moment, they just throw stuff out. And we've got to hope that the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, is in that category. She said this just yesterday. Watch.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. This is the Attorney General of the United States, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States, telling you that there's this other category called hate speech, and of course the implication is that's a crime. There's almost no sentence that Charlie Kirk, and I'm not running the risk of appropriating his memory for my own ends by saying this, it's provable. There's no sentence that Charlie Kirk would have objected to more than that.
Wow, man, if that doesn't say it, and that's totally true regardless of what you thought about Charlie Kirk, he did believe speech was one of the integral cornerstones of the West, of our civilization, of our country, and that it was derived through natural law, not some, civil right. And so many people point to like the Bill of Rights as the origins for the ability to speak freely, but we would have that right in a state of nature, the condition that the classical theorists would have described before the emergence of the state, that God gave us this right to speak. And if, you don't believe in a God, it's an extension of your humanity. And, that sounds awful familiar, what Pam Bondi just said, because take a look at this. This is what prominent Democrats said on the eve of this last election. It was one of the cornerstones of the Republicans that vied against the Democrats, pointing to this as reasons that you absolutely can't elect Kamala Harris. Right here, just take a look at this.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation, and that has to stop.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So
they're all the same, people. They're all the same.
We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
I think we need to
Yeah, you're looking into it, AOC. Everyone's looking into it. Right now, Pam Bondi is looking into it too. This was an electoral vehicle for the right that is now embracing this from the DOJ and using Charlie Kirk's murder to push this stance that was totally contrary and contradictory to his stated beliefs about free speech. That free speech includes hate speech. That hate speech isn't just this thing that government can carve out and prevent you from engaging in, because guess who also always gets to be the arbiter of that? The government. And guess what? They're going to throw the weaponization of the state against anyone they believe are purveyors of hate speech. They do it all the time. And Charlie condemned that, rightfully so. Let's continue.
And you've got to think the Attorney General didn't think it through and was not attempting to desecrate the memory of the person she was purporting to celebrate, that she just threw that out there, that she hadn't thought about it. You hope that. You hope that Charlie Kirk's death won't be used by a group we now call bad actors to create a society that was the opposite of the one he worked to build. You hope that. You hope that a year from now, the turmoil we're seeing in the aftermath of his murder won't be leveraged to bring hate speech laws to this country. And trust me, if it is, if that does happen, there is never a more justified moment for civil disobedience than that, ever, and there never will be.
Amen. Couldn't agree with that more. If the feds pass these stupid laws and the states, civil disobedience, do not agree with them. Push back against them. Violate them if necessary, but don't pervert your own sensibilities and your own thoughts. But do not accept this. Don't accept the laws. You know, this is something, again, that is paramount to our society, the ability to speak freely. I couldn't have this video, this podcast, this content if we didn't have that right. Neither could Tucker. Neither could many people talking on the stage today about politics. It's a new world with a new media. And government is going to be interested in silencing its opponents. They're already laying the propaganda groundwork for this from the right this time. The left did it too. We got it during the Patriot Act. We get it time and time again, and it's never good.
Because if they can tell you what to say, they're telling you what to think. There is nothing they can't do to you because they don't consider you human. They don't believe you have a soul. A human being with a soul, a free man, has a right to say what he believes, not to hurt other people, but to express his views. And by the way, that thinking, and not to pile on the Attorney General, who's a very nice person, but that thinking that she just articulated on camera there is exactly what got us to a place where some huge and horrifying percentage of young people think it's okay to shoot people you disagree with, to kill Nazis for saying things they don't like. Why do they believe that? How did we get here?
Well, agree with Tucker on that, but I wouldn't say that Pam Bondi's a nice person, because guess why? A nice person doesn't cover up a sex trafficking ring that involved very prominent people that was likely an intelligence operation by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. No nice person can lay claim to that. Tucker is very diplomatic in how he talks about some of these people, but this and that should be a resignation letter. My friend Clint Russell on Twitter posted that we should just consider this statement by Bondi a resignation letter, and that's exactly what it should be. This is literally indistinguishable from Tim Walz and Kamala Harris and, you know, John Kerry and AOC and what they said about this.
Is it the video games? Is it the SSRIs? Yeah, probably. But what it really is 12 and then 16 years of indoctrination in our schools at the hands of people who tell them that, who say exactly what the Attorney General just said. Well, there's free speech, which of course we all acknowledge is important, so important. But then there's this thing called hate speech. Hate speech, of course, is any speech that the people in power hate, but they don't define it that way. They define it as speech that hurts people, speech that is tantamount to violence. And we punish violence, don't we? Of course we do. They've been taught that every year of their lives. And so naturally, most of them believe it. So when Charlie Kirk is shot in the throat with a .30-06 on camera, I doubt very many young Americans want to see something like that or actually applaud the death of a man, a father, a husband. But they've been told for their entire lives in schools exactly what Pam Bondi just told them. Well, there's free speech, but then there's also hate speech, and woe to those who engage in it because it's a crime.
Well, this is why it's the biggest conflict of interest of all time for the state to have a monopoly on education, virtually so. At least much of it is a monopoly of the state. When the state gets to set the curriculum, where the state gets to propagandize what it thinks, it's no wonder that a lot of people coming out of that view the state as the ultimate solver of all the world's problems, of the solution to all of our, political problems. And that if there is a problem, we just need more state intervention, more state programs. And that is what is being taught, that hate speech is this special kind of speech that isn't protected. And guess what? The government always gets to be the arbiter of what is hate speech and what is not hate speech. So if you support that kind of hate speech legislation that's going to criminalize certain kinds of speech, you're no different than the villains in 1798 that passed the Sedition Act. You're no different than the villains that passed the Espionage Act in 1917 that led to the jailing of people that objected to the war, the Great War. Probably one of the most devastating things that ever happened. It was up to that point. So that's what group that you're in if you support this.
That's a lie. And it's a lie that denies the humanity of the people you're telling it about. And so any attempt to impose hate speech laws in this country, and trust me, there are a lot of people who would like them. There are a lot of people who'd like to codify their own beliefs by punishing those under the U.S. Code who disagree with their beliefs. Any attempt to do that is a denial of the humanity of American citizens and cannot be allowed under any circumstances. That's got to be the red line.
Amen, Tucker. That's got to be the red line. And whatever you thought about Charlie Kirk, he was particularly passionate about this. He's the guy that went to these college campuses talking to people underneath a sign that said, "Prove me wrong." The shooter that the FBI has arrested, he's the kind of guy that Charlie Kirk would have wanted to debate with. He would have wanted to, refute whatever he had to say about why Charlie Kirk was spewing such hate, because that's what's come out of the transcripts that the FBI has divulged yesterday. That's the kind of guy on an even playing field that Charlie would have talked to. But it's not an even playing field when he gets assassinated by that sort of person. Free speech is the cornerstone of so many of our rights. We can't do anything else and make informed decisions. We can't have the kind of life we want. We can't express ourselves without free speech, and government is always the ultimate impediment to that. We have to look back, even to a year ago. Look at what the right did. They blasted Joe Biden for the stupid Ministry of Truth idea, right? He was going to have a Ministry of Truth to police disinformation on the internet, use a centralized one-size-fits-all policy to sift from speech between speech that's acceptable and speech that isn't. It was vile and reprehensible and so anti-American, I can hardly articulate it. And now you have Pam Bondi up there recommending to do the same thing and doing it in the name of Charlie Kirk. That's pretty vile. And Netanyahu was vile too, to try to take advantage and propagandize this situation to recapture the American right. Force them in a more pro-Israel direction, knowing that he's losing hearts and minds, especially of young people, the kind of young people that Charlie engaged with, he was familiar with, he was friendly with. They were the pillars of his organization, and that's what you're seeing now. So whatever you have to say about Charlie Kirk, and man, I disagreed with him on quite a bit in regard to foreign policy. He was a China hawk. He supported tariffs, even though he rightly grew up reading about Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich von Hayek and Karl Menger and Murray Rothbard. He talked about that from time to time. He supported the protective tariff scheme. I don't think that's good. I also, of course, as you know, watching this program, deplore U.S. support for Israel of all kinds and looking the other way at the genocide in Gaza. Couldn't disagree with him more on some of those things, but man, when it came to free speech, he was right. And that can't be perverted. Neither side can let that be perverted this should be bipartisan in the best way, not in the way that it typically manifests in Washington, where the party of stupid and the party of evil come together and collaborate on doing things that are both particularly stupid and evil. That's something, you know, my friend Tom Woods talks about a lot. So if you want to honor the memory of Charlie, even if you didn't like him, honor his perspective toward free speech and not letting government get in the way with that, even if they call it disinformation or hate speech. But let me know what you think down below. Is Tucker Carlson right about this? Was this Charlie Kirk's most passionate belief? And is this the cornerstone of a liberty-oriented society? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Tucker Carlson, and please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support my channel. I'll tip my hat to you for doing that if you go to that length. And in addition to that, for doing so, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on my channel. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.